Hi, this is Cassandra with Honey Plant. This is our next installment in How to Live the Plant Life series. Today we're going to be talking about the basics of propagation. So what is propagation? There are two different types. The first is sexual propagation, which involves seeds, pollen, bees. But what we're going to talk about is asexual propagation. And that's how a plant clones itself, and it makes it easier for reproduction, or it helps it recover from issues such as rot. Today we're going to be talking about cuttings and division, leaf propagation, and while this is possible any time of the year, it is something you want to mainly concentrate on in the spring and summer when plants are more actively growing. It can take a lot longer in the wintertime. So first we're going to talk about leaf propagation. This is when leaves such as begonias, peperomias, and many other sorts of plants like succulents, burro's tail is another example, that they will shed a leaf, and that leaf will use the energy to force out a new plant from that leaf. So if you have a succulent like a burrow tail, or in our case we have a piece of golem jade, the leaf will fall off from the main stem. And with succulents, you want to make sure it comes cleanly off of the stem, and from this leaf the new plant is going to form right at the tip, and this is where all the cells will suddenly change from concentrating on making a healthy leaf into making a healthy new plant. For a plant such as a peperomia, the leaves and part of the stem are necessary to really be successful in creating a new plantlet. So I already had some leaves fall off from peperomia frost, and as you can see, the veins of the plant form into the petiole, and this little circular area is where all the new cell potential really is going to take off. And a little bit of the stem just helps keep a little moisture in, and what you will do is you will plant it into some dirt and just do it at a slight angle. Just kind of shift it 45-degree angle, tuck it in, and you're going to want to keep this one a little bit more moist, and any tropical plant for that matter. Begonia leaves are another great one to experiment with. As you can see here, we have one that's been growing for quite some time. And we've got lots of little plantlets forming, and here's the dried mother leaf. What's going to happen is the main mother leaf is going to dry up after it's used all its energy and water and into forming those new plants. And once those plants are decently robust and strong, you can transplant it into larger and larger pots until you have a nice big full plant. With the succulent leaf, however, you're going to want to let that sit very dry for maybe weeks at a time. And eventually you will get a plant form at the edge, and you'll have lots of roots come down below. This one's been growing in the soil for quite some time, but this leaf is still providing the little baby plant lots of energy, so we don't want to take it off until it's all dried up and crispy. Next, we're going to talk about what I like to call segment propagation. This will include taking cuttings from plants such as column cacti and snake plants. The leaves on a snake plant are not the traditional leafy leaves that we see on a lot of other tropical plants, and the entire segment of a snake plant leaf can be used to form a new plant. And what you'll do is you will take a cutting, a nice clean cut from a leaf of a snake plant, and you can make several. You can just cut off a leaf from a dying plant. If you just have one little bit, you can cut it to share with friends. You're going to cut it, let it callus for a few days, and then you're going to stick it into water. And after what may be months, you're going to have roots come out, and then it will start to form new plants from the base of the cutting of the snake plant leaf. So this is a very slow but effective way to share and help recover any snake plants you have in your collection. For column cacti, you might need to make a cutting from a segment of the plant if it has issues either from root rot and you have mushy base to the cactus. It'll be black, it might be brown, but it's going to be very mushy and start to be a little bit slimy. So what you'd want to do in that instance is keep cutting until you have a nice clean segment where it is all pale green or pale white and there's no sign of any brown rot coming up through the column of the cactus. Another reason you might want to take a segment cutting from a cactus is if it starts to get etiolated, and that is the stretching. It gets really skinny because it's looking for a little bit more light. So this accidentally happened to this cactus, and what you would do in this instance is you would take a nice clean knife and you would do a quick clean cut into the top of the cactus. And as you can see, it is nice and clean and white. And at this point, what you would do is you would have to let this sit out for weeks and weeks and weeks. I like to sprinkle cinnamon to prevent any fungal issues. And I would just set it off to the side. And eventually, both of these cuttings are going to callus over, and the top part is going to form roots, and the beheaded section is going to form new columns that come off the top. This is another many months long project, but eventually your cutting will form roots right at the bottom, sporadically at the base, and you will have a new cactus that you can plant into dirt. Next, we'll talk about node cuttings. This works best, in my experience, in water or wet sphagnum moss. What you will want to do is find a node on a vining type of plant that is either a long aerial root or is just a little nub that just is starting to stick out. This is the best rooting potential for vining cuttings such as pothos, monsteras, lipstick plants, Hoyas, but you don't necessarily need to have nodes sticking out. You can make your own nodes. What you will need to do is take a vining plant like this Hoya, and you will, let me get my cutters here, take a long-ish section, make a clean cut a little bit below some bottom leaves, and then you're going to pinch off those bottom sets of leaves, and right where those leaves were popping out is the rooting potential for your new little plant. And you can just stick that in your jar of water, and after a few weeks you should start to see some white filamentous roots forming, and once those are several inches long, you can transplant that into soil. Next, we're going to talk about propagation by division. This is more easily done with plants such as very full snake plants, calatheas, grassy plants, plants that have multiple stems coming out from the soil and have a separate root systems. This is a way to make sure your plant that is way too full and filling that pot can be thinned out and shared, and you can still keep it in that same size pot. Now we're going to show you what that looks like with this Pilea Moon Valley. It has lots of little stems poking out from the soil, and you will gently need to take it out And you can see that there's a nice little network of root systems. And you will try to gently untangle them because they're very entwined into each other. If you have a snake plant that is very full, sometimes it's much easier to take a nice clean knife and just cut through those root systems. But that is something that you want to do probably in the spring or summer so it can recover very quickly as it's growing actively. So you will gently untangle the roots, and then you have one plant, two plants, and 3, 4, 5. And you can pot these up separately. Just make sure to give them a good drink of water so that they can acclimate back into their new environment. There's going to be some amount of stress with this, as messing with the root systems can be very shocking to plants. So make sure you let them sit in a nice, bright, indirect area for long periods of time after you do this and before you share them with others, because they might get wilty and droopy, and it's good to let them recover before you share them. Okay, that was the basics of propagation. There are many more advanced techniques like air layering, grafting, tissue culture, and so feel free to ask us questions in the comments below or on our social media at The Honey Plant. And if you have any more ideas on the next set of videos we can do for you, please let us know. And again, I'm Cassandra at The Honey Plant.